Okay. Yoo-hoo! Booyah! I got the thing working! And no, I didn't get the thing working, as in the old one. I got the new one. And that works. So it had to have been either something was wrong with the actual microphone or the cord. I don't know. Okay, let's try and finish this. I think this is going to be the last video for this one. Anyway, Feline, my knight in shining armor. The sales bonus for Part 4, Volume 3. Feline is ready to learn mana compression, but an unexpected turn of events complicates her plans. This short story covers so much of the day that Rosemine wasn't able to witness. I really don't want to have to read about this, because this involves abuse. Because poor Feline. Because you all know what happened. Author's note. Lay nobles often lead tough lives, but Feline's house ranks low even among them. Daniel may be far from a lay noble house too, but his family is richer, in part because of the Offmer Company's support. Yeah. The very instant first bell chimed, I opened my eyes and sprang out of bed. I was very excited and for good reason. Today, Lady Rosamund was going to be teaching me her mana compression method. Immediately, I started to get dressed. In the Royal Academy, I would usually have my attendant help me, but the only attendant in this estate was Inera, and the aunt of my father's secondary wife. She would care for father and Lady Jonsara, but the only time she deigned to assist me was when I needed to wear outside clothes. Otherwise, I needed to manage on my own. Because I couldn't rely on an attendant here at home, I always wore commoner clothes that I could put on alone. I also did my best to help Conrad change, though I naturally couldn't be of much help while I was attending the Royal Academy. Inera had at least looked after him in my absence, and it seemed that even now she was dressing him each morning. Thank the Lord for that, at least. But, no, what she needs to do is at least make sure he gets enough food. Because the whole clothing thing be damned. You can't really survive without food, you know? You can survive without clothes, but you can't survive without food. I really appreciated the extra time that afforded me. Morning was an important time for retainers going to the castle. I gave my room a light clean, double-checked the clothes and other things I intended to bring with me, then speedily moved to the dining hall. I needed to finish preparing breakfast while Conrad was still getting changed. First, I made sure to light a fire in the hearth. I was going to heat up the leftover soup that the chefs had made yesterday. Then, while that was warming through, I grabbed some bread from the pantry, cut off some thin slices, and toasted them with cheese. Nobody who saw me now would think I was a noble. In my estate, to reduce the amount we spent on servants, we only asked the chefs to work from 2nd to 6th bell. We also prepared our own meals instead of getting the attendants to serve us. It wouldn't have surprised me to learn that rich commoners lived more like nobles than we did. I certainly wouldn't want anyone to see me like this. After putting the toasted bread on a plate and the warm soup in a bowl, I got some milk from our ice room and poured 2 cups. These past few days, this was normally when Conrad would arrive in the dining hall, but he still wasn't here. It was strange. I was working in the castle every day now, so he never missed a chance to eat breakfast or dinner with me. Could it be that Inera received a summons from Lady Jonsara? Probably. If so, she was probably ignoring Conrad. I went to leave the dining hall to check on him myself, but then Inera arrived. Inera, I said, where is Conrad? I went to wake him up for my usual routine, but he is not feeling well. I was told to let him stay in bed a while longer. A thin, mocking smile spread across her lips. If you truly were Lady Rosamund's retainer, we would not want your infamously sick lady to become ill as well. I don't like her. I really don't. I don't like any of them, except for Feline and Conrad. I even like her attendant, the one who went with her to the Royal Academy. I liked her better, because she doesn't seem to know about this abuse thing. And I assume she wouldn't have put it, they didn't show it because they know how she would react to it. Inera and Lady Jonsara still refused to believe that I was serving Lady Rosamund. It was frustrating, but I did not care. Trying to convince them felt like a waste of my time. Besides, once Father returned from gathering intelligence in the castle, they would no longer be able to doubt me. Yeah. I see, I replied. In that case, once I finish breakfast, I ask that you help me prepare to leave for the castle. Inera heaved a drawn-out sigh, acting like, oh, it's such a big deal! Lady, you bitch. Staying in the castle's playroom until the feast celebrating spring is important, I understand that. But you seem just as averse to spending time here as Lord Kaushik. And with that critical remark, she exited the dining hall. I don't blame her father for not wanting to be here. I don't blame him. She frustrated me, but I needed to endure it for now. I couldn't put on my castle clothes without her. I ate breakfast alone, maybe because it was so quiet and lonely without Conrad, or maybe because it was such a plain and simple meal. I couldn't help but think back to the lively atmosphere and the delicious food served at the Royal Academy. Though I am still so much more blessed than Conrad, at least I get to spend my lunches with the other retainers. After finishing my food, I put my dishes away and went to see my brother. Despite what Inera had said, I still wanted to check up on him. If only Lady Jonsara had never become so neglectful, then I wouldn't need to do this. Lady Jonsara had married into our house as a replacement wife not long after my mother died. And the funny thing is, remember, her father married into her mother's family, which means that Feline is rightfully the head of the successor of the house. Which means if she wanted to, she could go back to that house and kick them both out, kick all three of them out, essentially. She could. About a season after Conrad was born, Father had needed someone to raise us, so he was forced to pick between hiring a live-in maid and taking another wife. At the time, our distant relation, Lady Jonsara, had also lost a family member and was struggling as a result. Father decided that it was more economical to take her as a replacement wife, and she brought her aunt Inera as an attendant. And at first, everything went well. Lady Jonsara was kind to us, and Inera respected us as our father's children. However, after Lady Jonsara got pregnant, she started treating us more maliciously, of course. It was like, I'm assuming her entire personality did not change. I'm assuming she was always like this, but she was just waiting to let it out. It was like her entire personality changed. This wouldn't have been too much of an issue if Father had intervened, but he ignored our complaints and refused to take the situation seriously. He was also leaving all matters of the house to his new wife, which only made her more arrogant. At this point, she would outright ignore Conrad whenever he got sick, saying only, "It had better not spread to my darling baby." Father was warned. Asberga told him so many times that women prioritize their own children after giving birth. Asberga was family on my mother's side, and she accompanied me to the Royal Academy as an attendant. She had told me that Lady Jonsara would start being more compassionate when her baby's position in society became more secure. But I wasn't sure that would ever happen. To begin with, Lady Jonsara barely had any family. She had gotten married to her in her early 20s, which was late for a noble, and came into our family with nothing but the clothes on her back. She didn't even have a magic tool for her child, so it was unlikely he would get to live as a noble. And considering that Conrad and I were children of our family's first wife, we would probably never escape her ire. The whole magic tool thing, we're about to find out about that. Asberga had said that I would understand Lady Jonsara's feelings after having children of my own, but I didn't want to understand anything that could make someone so cruel. Still, Father is the root cause of all our problems. He ignored our repeated warnings not to have another baby before Conrad enrolled at the Royal Academy, and despite my pleas, still hasn't sent Lady Jonsara to the side building. Second wives were normally made to live in side buildings to avoid conflict with the first wife and her children. Feuds and discord were nigh inevitable otherwise. However, Lady Jonsara was not a normal second wife. She had married into our family to raise Conrad and me, so she had always lived in the main building. That remained the case even now that she had given birth, but it wasn't worth keeping her here when it created such animosity. I didn't intend to push for a divorce, nor was I going to make Lady Jonsara leave when she and her baby would struggle on their own. But if she was going to abandon her duty of raising Conrad, I wanted her and Inera to move into the side building. Father doesn't want to use it for monetary reasons, but the current situation really isn't good for Conrad. I sighed, recalling how Mother had asked me again and again to take care of my brother when she was gone. It wasn't long before I reached his room, and when I went inside, I saw that he was still in bed. "I heard you were unwell. How are you?" Conrad said nothing. He just looked at me, blanched and clearly in pain. His skin had started to... his man is starting to build up. That's not good. Because remember what Ferdinand said to mine? That essentially if she went on a rampage and her mana went out of control, her skin would bubble and she'd go boom. Which would only mean one thing. His body was full of mana. Young children only needed to empty their bracelet once every couple of months, but he must have forgotten. I rolled up his right sleeve to check. "You were taught to pour the mana from your bracelet into the magic tool beside your bed, remember? Conrad, where's your bracelet? And where did you put your magic tool?" There was no bracelet on his right wrist, and the tool that normally sat on his bedside was missing. Again, Conrad didn't respond. He just stared at me, stiff with fear, as if he had been ordered not to reveal the truth under any circumstances. "You don't need to answer," I said. "It could only be Lady Jonsara. She stole from you so she could support her baby." "Yep." Conrad nodded again and again, tears in his eyes. He suddenly seemed a lot less tense. He was probably relieved that I figured things out on my own. Well, she's not stupid. It's kind of hard to not figure that out. "She not only took his magic tool, but also threatened him to keep quiet. Unforgivable. I'm gonna reclaim what was stolen from him." My brother's magic tool was made shortly after our mother died, using her face stone and most of her remaining wealth. It was the crystallization of her love, an heirloom meant to stay with him even as her face faded from his memory. A secondary wife stealing it for her own baby was deplorable. It was the absolute worst thing a human being could do. Furious, I marched straight to Lady Jonsara's bedroom and threw open the door. She met my intrusion with a scowl and barked, "How rude! Get out of here at once!" This made the baby in her arms start to wail, which only displeased her even more. Normally, I would have been too intimidated to resist any further, but when I saw my brother's bracelet on the baby's arm, I realized that I couldn't just leave. I scanned the room, ignoring the crying and shouting, and spotted the magic tool and the face stone inside sitting atop the fireplace. As soon as I saw them, I rushed over and stole them back. "You are the rude one, Lady Jonsari. This is my mother's magic tool. It is for Conrad, not your baby. If you want your child to live as a noble, then you should have prepared for what you needed when you first married into our house. I will not allow you to steal my brother's belongings. Know your place." Lady Jonsara's expression morphed into a picture of rage. "That belongs to my child now," she screamed as she rang her summoning bell. I wouldn't stand a chance when Inara arrived. I returned Lady Jonsara's fierce glare. With one of my own, but then her eyes wandered. She had noticed something. "Sister." It was Conrad. He must have followed me. I moved to stand protectively in front of him, still glaring at Lady Jonsara, but this time her lips curved into a malicious grin. She no longer seemed to be under pressure. "It is too late for you to simply reclaim the magic tool," she said. "Given how little mana your brother has, he will not be able to refill it before it comes time for him to enroll at the Royal Academy. Still, it's not your place to decide this. It is his magic tool. It was having his mana registered to it. It was not yours to take." Lady Jonsara hadn't just stolen the magic tool. She had also used up all the mana that Conrad had poured into it since he was born. A chill ran down my spine, through that simple, cruel act, she might have made it impossible for my brother to live as a noble. Give it up. No, I will not budge. Conrad's future and your stealing mother's magic tool are completely separate issues. I gave the magic tool to Conrad. Lady Jonsara must have realized that I would come for the bracelet next, because she produced her staff to stop me, and the moment she did, there came a quiet shriek from behind me. My brother had instinctively dropped to the floor and was shaking like a leaf, making the abuse he'd endured all too clear. "What did you do to my brother?" I screamed, as overcome with white-hot anger that I had produced my own stab. It was then that Inara hurried into the bedroom. "Excellent news, my lady. Lady Feline was hiding a small fortune." "Arrgh!" She held up my savings, the money I put aside for the mana compression course, and my head suddenly began to spin. "Is your whole family made of thieves?" I cried. "That's my money. You can't have it." I had worked so hard to save it for Lady Rosemine's mana compression method. Were they seriously callous enough to steal the magic tool that Conrad needed to live as a noble, and the money I needed to live as a retainer? Despite the brief moment I was distracted, Lady Jonsara restrained me with the light from her staff. I collapsed in a heap while she glared down at her nose at me. "I am the matron of this house, and it will be my child who inherits that magic tool. You are one who must know her place. You are not the head of the house here. You married into the family just like her father did. You guys are not the successors of this house. She is." Again, she stole the magic tool from Conrad, who was still cowering in place. Then she opened my bag of money and started counting the coins inside with a gluttonous smile. Only when she was done did she return her attention to me. "Inara, remove these two from my sight. The storage room will do. Perhaps watching her brother writhe in pain, his skin bubbling and blistering as his mana puts him at death's door, will make Feline a little more obedient." I glared up at Lady Jonsara, letting the full extent of my hatred shine through. You will not be able to keep me there for long. I am a retainer, so Rayarda and Ottilie will be suspicious of my absence. They will go to father in the castle and ask for me. Naturally, he will not risk misinforming the arch-nobles, so he would return home to see how I am doing. I was bluffing. They would definitely be suspicious, but it was unlikely they would assume I needed rescuing. And while I genuinely believed that father would check up on me upon hearing of my absence, he would no doubt just send an ordinance to Lady Jonsara and accept whatever she told him. The fact that I could remain so defiant when my back was against the wall went to show how much Hartman's training had benefited me. He had warned me time and time again that showing fear or weakness when dealing with nobles of other duchies in the Royal Academy would make them look down on me, not on just me, but on Lady Rosamine as well. He had said it was precisely because I was a lay noble retainer that I needed to know when to defer to status and when to stand my ground. Inara looked worried, so my deception had probably worked a little, but Lady Jonsara just grimaced in displeasure. "There's no point in acting tough, Inara," she in the storage room. As instructed, Inara picked me up and threw me into the storage room closer to Lady Jonsara's bedroom. I struck the ground with some force and rolled a short distance. Conrad then kicked inside as well, whereupon he landed on top of me. "Sister, are you okay?" I wasn't. Lady Jonsara was an adult, meaning she had more mana and was stronger than me. I couldn't break my binds, but even so, "I'm fine," I said. "We just need to wait until father returns." Everything went dark as the door was shut behind us. Then there was a merciless clack as the lock was fastened. Oh, great. Inara hurried away soon after, presumably to report something to Lady Jonsara. Are you okay? I asked my brother. He paused and replied, I am, as long as I'm with you, sister. I wanted to ask about his mana, but it didn't seem wise to disrupt his calm. Stirring his emotions would also stir the mana within him. I closed my mouth to avoid saying anything unnecessary. After some time, second bell rang. This was when I would normally leave for the castle. I could just about hear Inara suggesting reporting that I was sick. Unadvised, authorized absences often reflected poorly on one's parents, and Lady Jonsara wouldn't want to damage father's reputation. I strained my ears in an attempt to catch more of the conversation. Riarda and Audley must be her friends from the playroom, given how she addressed them without titles, Inara said. Perhaps they work together as fellow apprentice scholars. Yeah, y'all are stupid. Y'all should know Riarda by now. She freaking works for the Archduke. Dude, y'all are gonna get it. It matters not. Send word. Understood. Ordonnance. Inara started making some presentable excuse about me not feeling well. Before she could finish, I took a deep breath and screamed, "Give me back my money!" at the top of my voice. After a moment later, the storage room door was unlocked and thrown open. Standing before us was Lady Jonsara, snarling like a fey beast. She smacked me across the face with all her might. Then before I could even process the pain, there came another loud crack and Conrad cried out. Once again, you disturbed my baby, Lady Jonsara shrieked. How many times must I teach you this lesson? I'm sorry, Conrad. I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Leave him alone, I shouted. Does father know you're doing this? Yeah, she has a right to give you orders. She's the lady of the house, not you. Lady Jonsara turned to me and roared, "Do not give me orders." She struck me again and again until she was satisfied, then exited the storage room and relocked the door, leaving us in darkness. Conrad, I said in a low voice, does Lady Jonsara always hurt you like this? There was a brief delay before Conrad started to explain what he had endured while I was at the Royal Academy. His retelling of events was stilted, as expected of a child, but the situation was clear. Lady Jonsara and Inara had barely taken care of him, and they had struck him whenever they were in a bad mood. They never gave me breakfast, he continued. That's why I was so glad when you came home, sister. I took in a sharp breath. I'd expressed my worries about Conrad seeming thinner when I first returned from the Royal Academy, but Inara had simply blamed his loss of appetite. That had been a complete lie. And they said I couldn't show you the bruises. He pulled up his shirt. Even in the darkness, I could see the purple welts all over his stomach. Inara had insisted on changing him so that I wouldn't see them. I'm so sorry. I've been home for days, but I didn't even notice. They never hit me when you were here, so... Conrad groaned. It was hard to know for sure, but I could guess that his mana was running wild again. Unless we took action, he would end up at death's door, just like as Lady Jonsara had said. Why am I so powerless? Were I an adult, I might have been able to steal back the tool from Lady Jonsara. I might have been able to break these binds, but my age didn't matter. I should have been able to avoid her attack in the first place. I could have fetched one of our houses out of the magic tools and gotten Conrad to channel his rampaging mana into that. Or maybe, if I'd at least changed into my castle clothes, I could have used the ordnance on my belt to call for help. Why didn't you... Never mind. Why? Actually, no. Why didn't you grab... When you saw that Conrad was so bad off in the bed, why didn't you go grab that stuff and use it? There was a mana-sucking black-face stone, too. Sister, please say something, Conrad said, his breathing now ragged, thinking about something else might help. Maybe hearing the stories that Mother had always told us when we were hurt or suffering would make him feel a little better. I started telling him the tale of a night which Lady Rosemond had put in her book. I swear upon the goddess of light, if you call for aid, I shall answer. Say the word, and I shall be there. In your time of need, will you call not for... on Haltung, the goddess of advice, but for me. Sister, will a knight save us too? Indeed, I said, surely. Surely one will come. It was a white lie meant to put my brother at ease. If such a convenience really existed, we would not have ended up in this position to begin with. I hope they come soon, Conrad said, leaning against me as he began to fall asleep. Bound as I was, I could neither pat his head nor rub his back. It was third bell. The mana compression lesson was due to begin, but there was no way for me to participate, not when I was bound and my savings had been stolen. My heart slowly shattered at the thought of all my hard work over the winter had amounted to nothing. The brave front I was putting up fell apart and tears streamed down my cheeks unbidden. Just how much time had passed since we were locked in the storage room, I started to wonder, but then I was pulled from my thoughts by footsteps and the sound of Lady Jonsara's voice. Feline's room is through here, she said, as if guiding someone. I could only assume we had an unexpected visitor. Carmela said, move aside a little. I wriggled along the floor like a worm, rolled onto my back, then kicked the door as hard as I could. I thumped it twice, then 3 times, and the footsteps started to get louder. Someone was coming closer, likely suspicious. That came from the storage room, Lady Jonsara said. Something must have fallen. She was trying to smooth things over, but I wasn't going to let her win. I desperately kicked the door again and shouted, "I'm in here!" "Stop, what do you think you're doing?" Lady Jumpstart screamed. Then a thin cut appeared in the door, allowing light to pour into the storage room. A moment later, the door fell outward, revealing Daniel with a sword in hand. "Felina's bedridden with a fever, is she?" Daniel asked, his voice harsher and colder than I ever would have expected from someone who was usually so warm. I could hear Lady Jumpstart swallow a shriek. "Well, there's Feline," Hartman said casually. Laisletta and Judith were standing behind him, both grimacing. He peered around the storage room and then added, "Looks like the money isn't here, though. It doesn't look like the money is here, though. Come on, Judith, that's our next focus." Judith looked between Daniel and me. "I think I should stay here. Daniel is a man, after all." "Nah," Hartman replied at once, shaking his head. "Feline was likely bound for so long that she can't move on her own. You think you could carry her, Judith?" He then gave Lady Jumpstart a dark, intimidating smile. "If this becomes an introductory concern, the lives of whoever used the money could be at risk." Hartman's phrasing was enough for me to guess what was going on. They had said that my savings were given to me by mistake as an excuse to come visit me. Yeah, I love that. Lady Jumpstart paled, then took Hartman and Judith straight to her bedroom. As they went, I heard Hartman sarcastically remark that my room, where the money was supposed to be, was in another direction. "I'll cut Feline's bonds," Daniel said as he entered the storage room. "Laisletta, take care of the little brother." Conrad was surprised to see so many new faces appear all of a sudden. His mana was still rampaging and making it hard for him to breathe. "Laisletta," I said, "if you have a black face stone with you, could you use it on my brother? His mana is overflowing." "I do have one," she replied with a reassuring smile. "I must ask you to worry about yourself, though." She pressed the black face stone against Conrad's forehead. Immediately his breathing became less ragged. Thank goodness. Having his mana sucked out must have been doing wonders for him. "Feline, stay still for a moment," Daniel said. "I'll remove these for you." He turned his staff from a large sword into a dagger before slicing away my restraints. Excuse me. His cuts were quick and precise, leaving me not a scratch on me, and the bands made from Lady Jumpstar's mana soon turned into light dust. The rumors of him having enough mana to rival men nobles, despite only being a lay noble, were no exaggeration after all. "I thank you ever so much, Daniel." I noticed his eyes had wandered to my attire and my expression froze. I was still wearing my commoner clothes. They had buttons on the front so that I could put them on, and they looked nothing like the apparel of a proper noblewoman. It was enough of a blunder for someone to deem me unworthy of serving as an Archducal retainer. I tried raising my hands to hide the buttons, but my arms were too numb to move, perhaps because I'd been restrained for such a long time. I felt so pathetic I wanted to cry. "Laisletta, could you help the little brother up?" Daniel asked, directing her attention to Conrad. "It looks like Feline can't move on her own after all." Then, without another word, he took off his cape and wrapped it around me, hiding my commoner clothes from the others. Nice. Again, I wanted to cry, but this time from happiness. Daniel, those are... He raised an eyebrow at me and pressed a finger to my lips as if to say that no explanation was necessary. His gray eyes were kind, and it was clear that he wasn't looking down on me for not being more like a noble. The temperature of the room suddenly seemed to rise, and a crackling noise like thawing ice reverberated through my head. It was as if the goddess of water and thunder had brought spring to my heart. "Oh no!" This is what she fell for him! Oh boy! The goddess of sprouts smiled and waved her hand, causing slight feelings of love to blossom within me. "Conrad, was it?" Laisletta asked, snapping me back to reality. "Can you stand?" I turned. My little brother could only nod when spoken to, but even then he must have understood that these two were here to help us. He timidly accepted her outstretched hand and stood up slowly. "Looks like he can move on his own," Daniel said. Feline parted me for a moment. He swept me off my feet as though I were light as a feather, his strong arms not wavering in the slightest. Perhaps because his face was now so close to mine, my heart pounded so hard in my chest that I worried it was audible. Oh my god, she loves this. She loves this so much. I hope those two do get together. That'd be cute. And it'd be good for Daniel, because he needs somebody. The poor guy's been going through life without a wife. Poor guy. This was too stimulating for me, especially when I had just been made aware of my feelings. The world around me was beginning to spin. After kicking down the door in his path... Did you have to kick it down? You could have had Feline open it. Or not Feline, Laisletta open it, sorry. Daniel stepped into the hallway. "Lady Rosamund doesn't forgive the mistreatment of children," he said in a very knightly manner as he climbed down the stairs, all the while keeping an eye out on those behind us. "Ask her for help. We can't do much else for you unless you do." My heart continued to throb. "Feline," Daniel said, "your father." I gazed ahead and saw spotted father coming out of the parlor. He saw me being carried down the stairs, then immediately looked past us, searching for someone else. He cared more about his new wife than his own daughter. And that reminder caused me to caused me to despair. Carmine and I had been freed from the storage room, but our torment would continue unless I retrieved his magic tool from Lady Jinsara and found us somewhere else to live. But how can I manage all that? My unease and sorrow must have shown on my face. Daniel smiled to calm me down, then gave my father a harsh glare and shouted, "Get out of the way!" Because of Lady Rosemine, Conrad was able to relocate to the orphanage. Meanwhile, I began living in the castle, which meant I could no longer spend all my time there in the northern building. It also meant I overheard many malicious whisperers as I moved around. So that lay noble is Lady Rosemine's retainer, huh? Just what did she accomplish to deserve that? A lay noble with a home in the noble's quarter, living in the castle? My shoulders trembled, and I sped up to escape the voices. Then, out of seeming nowhere, an Aran vest cape caught my eye at some point. Daniel had started walking beside me. "All you can do is keep your head up," he said. "Fewer people will gossip once you start getting more mana from Lady Rosemine's mana compression method." It was because Daniel shared his experience and encouraged me that I could smile and relax here in the castle. He was always there for me, offering me a hand when I was hurting, and each time he did, I became more convinced that he was my knight in shining armor. Oh, come on, Daniel, give it to her. Come on. Ask her to marry you. You two would be great together. I said I didn't expect my dreams to come true. I was well aware that Daniel and Lady Bridget were in love. Plus, he was an adult. He wouldn't give me a mere child such as me a second glance. Oh boy, that relationship don't last. Still, I wish to treasure these feelings, and I won't be a child forever. "Can you stay with me for a little bit longer?" I asked. "Sure. Also, if things ever get really bad, be sure to speak with Lady Rosemine. I might not be of much use, but she's able to help you for sure." I gave a half smile at his not quite right answer. It had recently come to my attention that his blindness to my love was perfectly in character. Still, each day in the castle brought with it a new discovery. I was busy, but I was also having fun. Okay. Charlotte, a new step forward. A previously unpublished short story that takes place near the start of Part 4, Volume 4. After being so abruptly denied a future as the Obs, Charlotte has a tea party with her mother Florencia. I think I've already seen this one. Or it might be partially in the prologue of one of the other books. Author's note. I turned what I couldn't squeeze into Part 4, Volume 4's sale bonus into its own very own short story. This one focuses on Charlotte's feelings and socializing between a parent and child in the Archducal family. It was as I expected. The feast celebrating spring had ended with a clamor after Wilfred and Rosemine's engagement was announced. And perhaps because the fiancé in question had immediately returned to the temple, the voices had only become more feverish from there. Wilfred was busy dealing with all the meeting requests, but things were quiet for me now that I was no longer in the running for becoming the next Ob. In the midst of the commotion, Mother invited me to a tea party. Her room in the main building was very close to the children's room where I lived before my baptism, so returning to the hall actually made me a little nostalgic. I hoped that Melkor was doing well. His attendants had all informed me that he had become a lot needier ever since I moved out. He was probably lonely, too. This year's winter playroom had kept me so busy that I hadn't visited very often. "Vanessa," I said to my head attendant, "would it be possible for me to visit Melkor after my tea party with Mother? Your request is too sudden for you to see him today. I will submit an inquiry for a later date." Even visiting the chambers where I grew up required me to get permission first. Being a member of the Archducal family really was tedious, especially when I compared my own upbringing to those of my retainers. After passing by the children's room, I ended up outside Mother's room. "Welcome, Charlotte," she said as I went inside. "It has been a long time since we have spoken alone." Let us go to my hidden room. For her to have made a suggestion like that, we were probably about to discuss something that would disturb my emotions. Already feeling tense, I thanked her for the invitation and went into her hidden room. How long it had been since I was last here? Probably a while. I took a seat while the attendants prepared tea, then several sweets I'd never eaten before were placed in front of me. The chefs had been working hard on new recipes in the run-up to the Archduke Conference. Sylvester bought these new recipes from Rosemine, Mother explained. He plans to introduce them during the Archduke Conference. One after another, my sister comes up with so many unique ideas. Under normal circumstances, a noble who introduced a new recipe was actually taking credit for the work of their personal chefs. This wasn't the case for Rosemine, though. As I understood it, my sister would teach her chefs what she wanted them to make. "Mother, how has Melkor been as of late?" I asked. I grew quite wistful when passing by his room, and I would appreciate the chance to visit him. "He would be delighted to see you or Wilfred. All he seems to speak about these days is wanting his baptism ceremony to come sooner." At the moment, he and his attendants were planning what furniture to put in his room. "Oh my, that sounds quite premature, does it not? Melkor's ceremony won't be till next year." Early or not, they were likely already choosing their craftspeople. I thought back to my own pre-baptism preparations. You have been so busy running the winter playroom that you haven't been able to visit him as much, correct? I understand that he has been very lonely ever since you left for the northern building. I eagerly await the day he joins me. On that pleasant note, the tea preparations ended and Mother cleared the room of attendants. Only the two of us remained. Mother smiled at me. Charlotte, have Wilfred and Rosamund told you much about the Royal Academy? Yes, though Rosamund speaks only of the library, it contains magic tools that take the form of shoe mills, and we are going to be making clothes for them, correct? My retainers are looking forward to participating. How many books it had, how much the librarian Solange was a respectable person, how amazing Schwartz and Weiss were, no matter how much Rosamund's attendants tried to keep her on track. She always ended up raving about the library in one way or another. Her attendants had seemingly accepted defeat midway through and were now letting her speak at her leisure. Her golden eyes sparkled with excitement, and only during that gushing did she actually seem her age. It made her so much more adorable than usual. And what does Wilfred say, I wonder? He complains about Rosamund dragging him into incidents, brags about having been selected as an honor student, and expounds his thoughts on Gwenin. Regarding that last point, he seems especially overjoyed to have beaten Lord Ortwin of Drwanko. He spoke of their game on several occasions. And what did your apprentice retainers who entered the Royal Academy think about that? Mother asked searchingly. She wanted to know the unspoken truth behind the reports she was receiving. If any of the retainers were lying to her and father, it would become hard to identify what was true. Wilfred tends to exaggerate somewhat, I said, but he did seem to need to oversee Rosamund's march to have all the first years pass the first time around, attend several tea parties full of girls, and manage treasure-stealing dinner rematches. There can be no mistaking that he has been fighting hard. I see, Mother replied, sighing in relief. She had apparently worried about how my brother would fare in the Royal Academy, and the reports she had received probably weren't too far from the truth. However, I continued, Rosamund seems to exert a lot more influence. She beat Dunkelfelger at dinner, spread several new trends, established personal connections to the royal family and top-ranking duchies, and paid many students of other duchies for Crest-certified work. She was absent for most of the term, but that only encouraged a storm of rumors which gave her an even greater presence if she had stayed. In his reports to Sylvester, Wilfred mentioned only that Rosamund has been dragging him all over the place, Mother said. We knew nothing else about what he has been doing. She sipped her tea, then looked at me carefully. I set my cup down and met her gaze, though I was feeling especially tense. It was clear from the look on her indigo eyes that she was about to broach the main focus of our meeting. I wish to apologize to you about Wilfred and Rosamund's engagement. Mother, not only have the duchy's circumstances buffeted you with demands, but we've also stolen your chance to become the next Ob. I regret these outcomes, and I truly am sorry. Much like Wilfred under grandmother, I was raised to become the next Ob, to compete with my brother for the ruling seat of our duchy. My archducal education had stopped and started again and again depending on Ehrenfest's circumstances, whether they were grandmother's arrest, the Ivory Tower incident, or Rosamund's long slumber. But now, this engagement had put a definite end to my battle for the archducal seat. All of my training had been for nothing. Hearing my mother's apologizing roused the frustrations that had smoldered in my chest ever since the announcement. Finally, they began to rampage beyond my control. Charlotte, Mother said. She rose from her seat and stood next to me, then tenderly rested a hand on my shoulder. I guess she saw that you were kind of getting upset. I guess maybe your eyes were changing colors. Who knows? At once, warm droplets rolled down my cheeks and dripped onto my hands, which were balled into tight fists. I could understand correcting the poor education he received from grandmother in time for his debut, I said, but then there was the Ivory Tower incident. And this engagement has returned him to becoming the next Ob. Even after that, it's just too much. It feels like a road to the archducal seat has been paved just for him. He must have the love of the gods. I had worked hard my entire life. Back when Wilfred was playing to his heart's content and being doted on by grandmother, I was studying to become the Ob. When he was throwing away his reputation in the Ivory Tower, I was honing my skills. And when my sister was rendered unconscious, I slaved away to fill the hole she left behind. Yet my efforts had never been rewarded. Not since grandmother was arrested and mother vouched for Wilfred to become the next archduke. It just isn't fair, I finally said, letting my displeasure bubble up out of me. It wasn't beautiful or graceful, but mother did not scold me. Instead, she simply stroked my head and my back, apologizing. I wiped my tears away and took a moment to steady my breathing. Then I took my mother's hand, smiled at her, and said, I am okay now. The unfairness of it all does still frustrate me. But I would not have let it show if you had not given me the chance. Yes, I am sure, Mother replied. Your retainers were very worried. They knew you would not express these feelings to them, so they asked me to lend you an ear as soon as I could. Mother surely had a lot going on right now. The nobility was clamoring about the announced engagement, and the Archduke Conference was right around the corner. Still, at the urging of my retainers, she had invited me to a tea party nonetheless. even though she and my retainers are struggling as well. I was no longer a candidate to become the next Ob, but my retainers were being so hard-working and considerate as well. Or as always, I needed to prove that I was deserving of their service. I understand that this engagement is what's best for Ehrenfest, I said, but the thing is, if it were Rosemine becoming the next Ob, I would have at least understood. She's better than me across the board. My baptism had made us sisters, but Rosemine had made so much mana and so many amazing talents that everyone thought her adoption was a foregone conclusion. I was under no illusion that I could even begin to compete with her. To me, my sister was the girl to whom I owed my life, and she deserved the utmost respect. Because, yeah, she does. You do owe her your life, because if it hadn't been for her, who knows what would have happened to you. I continued, of course I understand that her gender, health, and lineage would complicate her becoming the next Ob Ehrenfest, and with your influence, Mother, there can be no other pairing. Melkor was too young to be Rosemine's partner, and I was a girl. I shan't protest as my sister seems to accept the engagement, but it bothers me that this marriage is the only reason Wilfred gets to rule. Charlotte, I feel especially sorry for Melkor, whose future has been closed up before he could even be baptized. Neither one of us would ever become the next Ob now. It was truly frustrating how often noble customs and expectations made one's hard work amount to nothing. Mother shook her head, watching me closely. He was never given a chance to begin with, so I doubt he would feel the loss so keenly. I am more worried about you. Yeah, because Melkor, I don't think he would have been studying to become the next Archduke. You were. So of course you're going to feel this loss more. She was likely speaking from experience. The next Ob Frembeltech had been decided when she was barely a child, so she had scarcely been conscious of the situation growing up. I am okay with this as long as Melkor does not suffer from it, I said, then exhaled slowly. I may be expressing my dissatisfaction with this outcome, but I accept it all the same. This rare chance to be vulnerable and tell my mother my true feelings had been a great weight off my mind. Knowing that Melkor would not suffer the same frustrations and sense of powerlessness that I was currently dealing with put my heart at ease. It is as you say, Charlotte. Of my children, Wilfred is the only one capable of marrying Rosemine as she spreads trends and advances in industries. Please support him as a sister. Sister, we do share the same parents, but... For the first time, I realized how different my mother and I saw Wilfred. In my eyes, Melkor was my only true brother. My mother seemed to view the three of us as a trio. Well, technically she is. He is her child because she, 1, gave birth to him, 2, claimed him as his mother when his baptism came up. So, yeah, they are siblings, even though you probably don't see it that way because he was always with your grandmother. She still considers Wilfred her child, even though she never raised him. It was grandmother who brought him up, after she stole him, that is. It was exceptionally bizarre. I had not lived with Wilfred prior to my baptism, so I felt as close to him as I did to my adoptive sister. In other words, he did not seem quite like a blood relative. It did not help that my experiences with grandmother had only ever been unpleasant. Not that I was raised to beat Wilfred and become the next Ob. Even now, I saw him as just less as someone to work alongside and more as a rival whom I could not afford to lose to. Now that I can admit it, Mother considers all three of us equal, so it would only hurt her feelings. And at the moment, my relationship with Wilfred was positive overall. Grandmother was no longer around to show favoritism, and we now had an adoptive sister helping to close the gap between us. There was no need to go out of my way to mention that I did not view him as a true brother. Indeed, I said, Wilfred is still quite unreliable in some areas, so I will do my best to support him. Mother must have noticed that I was calm again because she went back to her seat and refreshed our tea using the implements the attendants had provided us. I took a sip of my drink and was immediately hit with a wave of nostalgia. This was my mother's preferred flavor, one that I had drunk almost non-stop from an early age. But it's not quite to my taste anymore. Slowly but surely, I was developing my own preferences. It seemed that my taste of tea was evolving as I grew and experienced the sweets that Rosemine came up with. I was raised to believe that the next seat of Ob should go to whomever is most worthy, I said. Thus, even now, I think the position should go to Rosemine. She had an exceptionally clear vision of what kind of duchy she wanted to lead. My heart had always been set on mundane developments, whereas her ideas were so much more impressive. She has created whole new industries, so if we want Ehrenfest to grow, Wilfred should at least support her in his capacity as Ob. Mother's indigo eyes blinked in surprise. Lord Ferdinand said the same thing. Uncle did? Indeed, he said that rather than Rosemine learning to provide support, Wilfred must learn to take her reins. Rosemine had apparently been furious about this, not wanting to be viewed as some kind of wild horse. I giggled despite myself. She would speak so harshly to Uncle of all people. Fearless, isn't she? They always seem to be picking fights with one another, but I am told that is how they always act when they are together. It makes me anxious just watching them. I could guess that Mother was always silently debating whether it was okay for them to be so open with each other. Charlotte, she said, her smile suddenly replaced with a more serious expression that made me sit up straight. Someday soon, all of Jurgen Schmidt will realize that Rosemine is introducing not just new sweets and recipes, but also new industries such as printing and papermaking. We cannot even begin to imagine how much influence she will wield when that happens. Many more duchies will seek to form connections with Ehrenfest than before. I nodded. Rosemine was already receiving an impressive number of marriage proposals once her engagement to Wilfried was announced and it became clear that she would not be leaving Ehrenfest. I was sure to be targeted next. Those who saw connecting with our duchy as a top priority would even want me as a first wife so that I could attend the Archduke Conference. In preparation for when you marry into another duchy, use this time to strengthen your bonds with Wilfried and Rosemine as much as possible, Mother said. The strength of your connection to Ehrenfest will determine how well you can protect yourself in the future. The strength of my connection, I repeated. Mother's intentions were clear to me. I was now being raised not as the next but as the future first wife of another duchy. How you are treated in your new duchy will depend on the support and assistance you receive from Ehrenfest. For a woman due to marry elsewhere, what matters most are your foresight and your relationship with the next Your partner's love will not be enough. Is that really how Mother feels, even though Father loves her so much that he outright refuses to take a second wife? Again, Mother was speaking from experience. Her treatment had no doubt changed significantly after her family and Fullmetal was wrapped up in the purge. I recalled Grandmother's cold eyes and sighed. In that case, I shall deepen my bond with Rosemine. Oh? Not with Wilfried? Mother asked, her eyes wide. Most nobles would prioritize siblings with whom they shared a mother, and considering that Mother and Father were close with their siblings in Fullmetal, I doubted they would understand my choice. Rosemine is far more reliable, I said. She rushed into the night sky to save my life even when we barely knew one another, did she not? Rosemine was belittled in the shadows for having been raised in the temple, but I appreciated her deep compassion, a rare trait among nobles. And the way she could make decisions in the heat of the moment. If my life were ever endangered again, I could trust her to come to my rescue. There are many reasons I wish to be of use to Rosemine, I said. Among them, I wish to repay the debt I owe her. Were I a man, I would do everything in my power to drag Wilfried down and then marry Rosemine myself. Yeah! Oh, God, that would actually be cool. That would actually be cute. That would actually be cute because, yeah, they do care about each other a lot. I could say with all certainty that I would support her much better than he ever could. Oh my, Charlotte. Mother let out a gleeful chuckle. Elvira would jump at the chance to write about two siblings fighting to marry Rosemine. Don't tell her that! Don't tell Elvira that! She will put it in a book, but she'll gender bend everything. I did not want to be father for Elvira's books, but I was speaking only the truth. I really do want to repay her, even if only bit by bit. My hope is to at least cover for her weaker points. Then study well. I assume you're aware of what the other nobles are saying about you participating in the printing industry before attending the Royal Academy. It was Rosemine who pushed for your involvement, you know. The nobility called me an upstart for trying to involve myself in industries before enrolling at the Royal Academy. Someone even said that letting me participate was foolish since I would one day marry into another duchy and would potentially leak very sensitive information. Their voices had deeply frustrated me, but it seemed that Rosemine had saved me once again. I did not know that, I said. Sylvester informed me just the other day. You bemoan not having the favor of the gods, but they did bless you with Rosemine. Somehow, hearing that filled me with strength. I gazed up at my mother and gave a firm nod of agreement, at which point she smiled, stood up, and opened the door. Outside her room, I could see my retainers all wearing a very concerned expressions. They must have been very worried about me. As I reunited with them, I realized that I had taken a new step forward, not toward becoming the next Abba of Ehrenfest, but toward being the first wife of the duchy. I wonder who she'll end up with. That's who I wonder. Charlotte, my task. The sales bonus for Part 4, Volume 4, set around the time Charlotte was first assigned to participate in the printing industry as a member of the Archducal family. In the story, she receives a request from Rosemine, who is busy in the temple. Author's note. The announcement of Wilfried and Rosemine's engagement had a pretty sizable impact on Ehrenfest's factions and the atmosphere in the castle. Rosemine doesn't really notice since she's usually away in the temple, and assumes the nobles' squabbling is business as usual, but Charlotte feels the change a lot more keenly. After lunch, I began studying in my chambers. On my desk today were documents that Elvira had told me to look over before going to Haldensale. This is quite the stack, I said Marvin, one of my scholars, who was in his 40s and male, which was rare among my retainers. Previously, he had served my mother, but he had been reassigned to teach me my other scholars so that I could participate in the printing industry. It is definitely more work than one should expect a child not yet old enough for the Royal Academy to manage. Is it, I asked? 2 years ago, Uncle gave me much more than this and told me to memorize it before spring prayer. I thought back to that mountain of boards and remembered the struggle of working through them. Back then, I narrowly achieved the bare minimum of what was expected from me and was told to memorize the rest by next time. Now, in contrast, I was only having to look over these documents from Elvira, not memorize them. I was barely in trouble at all. I heard as much from Lady Florencia, Marvin replied. I see that Lord Ferdinand is merciless to all, even children. Indeed, it would not be an exaggeration to say that my sister's brilliance is due to his teachings. In the brief period between her breaking up and going to the Royal Academy, he crammed so much wisdom into her head that she came first in class. Rosamund had proven that she could consistently meet Uncle's absurd demands, and it made me respect her from the bottom of my heart. Uncle was wise and talented, but he was also harsh and scary, and rarely spoke a word of praise to anyone. Yeah, it's hard to get a word of praise from this guy. You'd be lucky to get a good, or even a very good, is the best he'd give you. He was the last person I wanted as a teacher. I see, Marvin replied. That said, these documents made it clear that Lady Rosamund is less invested in her own position and more interested in developing Ehrenfest and supporting Lord Sylvester's children. He set down some budget and income documents and pointed at a section in particular. I leaned forward to look, as did my apprentice scholar, Marion. The industry has produced these enormous profits in the mere few years since its conception, he continued. Considering her position as an adopted daughter and the like, working alongside the Ob's blood children in such a manner would normally be unthinkable. Most would expect her to use this opportunity to monopolize the industry and its profits, strengthening her position and giving form to her faction. According to Marvin, my sister carried a burden that my brother and I did not. As an adopted daughter, she was forever having to demonstrate her worth to the nobility. That dissimilarity between our positions had never even occurred to me. Marion looked contemplative all of a sudden. So you say, but Lady Rosamund's engagement has made her position unshakable. Did she not have Lord Wolfred and Lady Charlotte participate in the industry precisely because she no longer needs to monopolize it? Marvin crossed his arms and gave a sardonic smirk. He hardly seemed to agree, which made me a little worried. Rosamund approves of the engagement, I said. Do you believe there is to be something wrong with it? Well, who is to say whether she truly does approve? An adopted daughter cannot refuse a request made by her adopted father. At the very least, the rumors flitting about makes it clear that neither of their factions support the engagement. In that sense, can you truly describe her position as secure? Wolfrey was backed by the former Veronica faction, who criticized Rosamund for her poor lineage and for having been raised in the temple. Conversely, Rosamund had the support of the Liesgang faction, who said that Wolfrey was a disgraced archduke candidate not fit to be the next Ob. Yeah, that's true. That is all true, I admitted, but nobles inwardly find fault with anyone, do they not? Yep. Father was receiving criticisms from both sides for his decision to detain grandmother. The Liesgang faction complained that he had done it too late, while the former Veronica faction complained that he had done it at all. Mother was accused of monopolizing father's love and not letting him take a second wife. That's not her choice. That's his choice. He's the one who refuses to do so. It's not her fault. If she had I'm sure she's told him to take a second wife before. But no, he doesn't want to. As for me, I was being held responsible for Rosamund's long slumber and getting called an upstart for trying to be involved with the printing industry despite not yet attending the Royal Academy. Being in the Archducal family meant that no matter what we did, we were sure to displease someone. Yeah, you can't please everybody. You're not going to be able to please everybody. Trying to respect every opinion was impossible. That's what I'm saying. Blood children do not have to worry about being ousted from the Archducal family over mere rumors, Marvin explained, but the same cannot be said for an adopted child. That is precisely why I would advise Lady Rosamund to monopolize the industry to strengthen her position. Were I serving her, that is. Still, the fact we are in this situation at all when she has Lebrecht's son among her retainers baffles me. Now, with the precariousness of my sister's position thrown in my face, I stared at the documents piled up in front of me. Under normal circumstances, Rosamund would be monopolizing the industry for herself and using the profits to stabilize her position, but instead she was sharing it all with us, because that's how she is. She saved my life, shared with me her profits, and is pushing for me to participate in this new industry, I muttered. Rosamund only ever treats me well. Few welcomed my association with printing. It was often considered too risky to let someone who will one day marry into another duchy to be so deeply involved with the leading industry. Yeah, because you know the whole leaking information thing. However, it was precisely because I was going to marry elsewhere that I needed to participate. I could not afford to wait either. It was very possible that 1 year from now, after my first year at the Royal Academy, there would no longer be any room for me. Or perhaps there would be a considerable shift in what tasks I could give my retainers. All in all, it was because Rosemine had said to Father that all of his children should be equally involved in the Duchy's new industry that my pride and dignity as a member of the Archducal family remained intact. Oh, when might I finally be able to repay this debt? I mused aloud. The best way to repay her would be to learn well, Lady Charlotte, Marvin said. Become able to compensate for her falls. Does she even have any? I asked, tilting my head. Yes, she does. Vanessa, my head attendant, laughed. You certainly are biased when it comes to your sister, milady. Do you recall that she was raised in the temple and spent 2 years in a coma on top of that? The Ob and the others often say that her socializing skills are lacking. Oh, yes. She's not good when it comes to noble stuff. Noble socializing. Oh, that reminds me. She definitely failed to understand the meaning of her own words when she promised to be my ally. Perhaps the time she had shielded me from the veiled malice of other nobles had skewed my opinion. I remember thinking back then that her socializing was perfect. But in careful retrospect, it seemed that she had been relying on stopgap phrases taught to her by Uncle. She was familiar only with often used euphemisms, which made me wonder how often she actually understood what people were saying. Furthermore, Vanessa continued with a smile, Audley was bemoaning how Lady Rosamond always prioritizes work over her bridal duty of learning to sew. She was hoping that you might spend some time practicing embroidery with her, milady. Lady Rosamond is always so much more motivated when she is with you, so it would assist her greatly. About that, actually. From what I've heard, apparently Rosamond is exceptional at embroidery. She just downplays it because she doesn't want to do it. Because it cuts into her reading time, essentially. So if she had to choose between embroidery and reading, she would choose reading every time. Even if she's really good at embroidery. I think she would only do embroidery if she absolutely thought it was necessary. Or if somebody's life was going to be at stake, she would do it. I was by no means fond of embroidery myself, so Audley must have been thinking that this was an opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Even so, there was a lot more pressure on me to get better than there was on Rosemine. I was going to be married into another duchy, whereas she was already engaged. I am likewise more motivated with my sister, I said. Then I will schedule more embroidery time while Lady Rosemine is in the castle, Vanessa said, excited. Out of nowhere, a white bird that I recognized as an ordonnance pushed through the window. It flew around the room, then landed on Vanessa's arm and said in a familiar voice, This is Rosemine. Please convey the following to Charlotte. Oh my, this must be the first time she has contacted me from the temple. Has something happened to her by chance? I watched the ordonnance carefully, straining my ears so as to not miss a single word until eventually... And so, the bird concluded, I wish for you to investigate the time the noble's quarter was renovated and why the lower city was left out. By speaking with merchants, Rosamond had apparently learned about the lower cities of other duchies. She now wanted me to find out more about our own lower city. Marianne gave me a curious look and murmured, Lady Avara is in charge, and she has her own scholars in the castle, so why has Lady Rosamond decided to ask you, Lady Charlotte? Vanessa picked up the yellow face stone that has once been the ordonnance and smiled. City renovations must be done by the Archducal family. Have you not yet learned this at the Royal Academy? She no doubt wishes for Lady Charlotte's help because an archnoble won't have access to the information she seeks. Shall we send a reply of assent, milady? Of course, Vanessa was only asking for the sake of appearances. She understood well enough that I would never refuse a request from Rosemine. She sent the ordonnance back before I could even respond, while Marvin began clearing the documents off my desk. Lady Charlotte, let us hurry to the bookroom. If the relevant documents are not there, then we will need to have the Archduke search the archive that only the Ob can access. Oh my, but fixing the lower city is an urgent matter. Rosamond even said it must be done by summer. Should we not inform Father first? Marvin shook his head. Father was busy enough preparing for the Archduke conference. If we were going to ask him to take on even more work, we would need to make sure we had explored all of our options first. This included collecting everything of relevance from the castle's bookroom and collaborating it with Elvira, the industry's ultimate superior. Lady Rosamond has entrusted this to Elvira first and foremost because she knows this is a very hectic time for the Ob, Marvin concluded. We must not undermine her efforts. Understood, I replied. Let us begin with the bookroom. Marianne, contact the scholars in Rosamond's chambers. I wish to know how they are coordinating. As you will. It's a request from Rosamond herself. I must make fulfilling it my highest priority. I gathered my scholars and rushed to the library. This was my chance to repay her. Almost immediately upon our arrival at the castle's bookroom, we were joined by Rosamund's apprentice scholars, Hartman and Feline. They and the other scholars promptly split up and started researching Entwickeln. Elvira and the lay scholars working in the printing industry arrived as well. Lady Charlotte, Elvira said, we appreciate the magnanimity of your summons. No, under normal circumstances, this investigation should have remained entirely within the Archducal family. It cannot be easy being in charge of this operation, Elvira, but I must ask for your assistance nonetheless. After compiling various records, we concluded that large-scale Entwickelns were carried out all across the country after a new invention from Dronkel's went public. Ehrenfest planned to modernize its lower city as well, but this was postponed indefinitely when great-grandmother married into the duchy and it became necessary to renovate Groschel. We are unlikely to find much else here, Elvira said, as one would expect more specific documents such as schematics from when this Entwickeln was performed will be in the Archduke's archive. We will send our findings along later, but it would be best to tell the Ob what we have learned as soon as possible. Unfortunately, it will not be easy to arrange a meeting with him this close to the Archduke conference. Seeing her struggle, I decided to speak up. Elvira, perhaps I could ask Father? I can report to him over dinner, which avoids all the hassle of arranging a meeting. This is presumably why Rosamund chose me to help her in the first place. Please do, Lady Charlotte. That will be exceptionally helpful. I could not compare to the scholars when it came to gathering documents or summarizing their contents. For that reason, most of my day had been spent in the corner of the room, trying to keep out of the way while I went over Elvira's printing industry documents to pass the time. It really hadn't felt like I was contributing, so this was a welcome development. Ah, 6th bell. Could we compile our research tomorrow by chance? Let us gather again at 3rd bell. Come 6th bell, the scholars hurried off. They were going to have to make numerous copies of the documents for their superiors, which was anything but a quick process. It seemed we would need to spend a few more days visiting the bookroom. So I investigated the castle's bookroom with Elvira and the others, concluding my dinner time summary of the day. Our findings will be sent to your scholars at a later date, so please investigate your archive once they arrive. Father was visibly surprised to learn that renovations for our lower city had been on hold for decades. He rested a hand on his chin and frowned, deep in thought, then began counting something on his fingers. If we start now, we should still have enough time for the Entwickeln. Thanks, Charlotte, you really saved us here. Good job finding all this out. Thank you, but your gratitude should go to Rosamund. She gathered information that could not have been found in the noble's quarter and then gave us directions. I also added that Elvira had assisted us in the printing industry's highest authority, at which point Father promised to praise their efforts as well. I returned to my meal, pleased to have kept my promise, but when I glanced up again, I realized that Wilfred was glaring at me with his cheeks puffed out. How come Rosamund always goes to you for help, not me, he complained. I could have done this a lot faster if she asked me as well. Well, I don't know. I don't know why she didn't ask you. Oh, my, I replied, I understand how you feel, brother, but are you not rather busy with your studies? At the end of winter, with the announcement of my sibling's engagement, it had abruptly been decided that Wilfred would become the next Ob. This meant I was no longer in the running for the position, so I wasn't having to study as much as before. But Wilfred was having to study dramatically more. On top of that, we were both still participating in spring prayer and the printing industry. Rosamund had no doubt been hesitant to load our brother with even more work. I returned to my chambers after dinner and immediately went to bathe. To my surprise, when I was done, I came down to see my retainers all waiting around a table wearing troubled frowns. Under normal circumstances, my scholars would have taken their leave by now. Lady Charlotte, they said, Lord Oswald just visited. Lord Oswald was our brother's head attendant, but why had he come immediately after dinner when I was guaranteed to be in the bath and unavailable? It must have been very urgent. After bracing myself, I asked for details. Marvin spoke first. Lord Wilfrid needs more achievements to his name, else the Elias gangs are going to tear him apart. That is why Lord Oswald came. He wants you to start taking his lore to the bookroom from tomorrow onward. What? Is that all? I was stacking myself up to get dressed again, depending on the severity of the circumstances, but their unexpected request simply made me hang my head. Could this not have waited until breakfast tomorrow? I returned my attention to Marvin, wishing only to say, whatever, it makes no difference to me. Before I could utter a single word, however, Marvin's eyebrows shot up in anger. That phrasing was much too generous. Marvin, do you not always tell me to be precise in my report? Forgive me, Lady Charlotte, but that explanation was not the least bit accurate. As it turned out, Oswald had actually said, this Entwickeln job is not suited for Lady Charlotte, who will one day marry into another duchy. It should be Lord Wilfrid, our next Archduke, leading the investigation instead. That really changed things. I was no longer being asked to let my brother accompany me. I was being told to surrender my task to him entirely. It was clear to me now why my retainers were such deep frowns. Marianne continued. Lord Wilfrid was recognized as an honor student in his first year, and it seems he has now finished preparing for his second. His retainers consider it more important for him to focus on gathering achievements than to continue studying. As you are his sister by blood, they wish for you to help him, Marvin added. Instinctively, I put a hand on my cheek. It was true that Wilfred needed more achievements under his belt, but why hadn't Oswald come to say this after dinner and while I was in the bath? If my brother wishes to share the credit, could he not have made this request over dinner? We could have settled it then and there. I feel sorry for Oswald that he had needed to carry out such an unusual order. It was bizarre to the point of being incomprehensible. Lord Oswald seemed displeased that you did not extend the offer yourself when Lord Wilfrid complained at dinner, Marianne replied. In his words, as someone who would one day be living in another duchy, Lady Charlotte must learn to be more observant of those around her. I must admit his remark irritated me. It made sense that Marianne was fuming. She had only become a retainer a year and a half ago, meaning she had not experienced what things were like when grandmother was active. In the past, incidents like this had been commonplace. Irritating or not, Lord Oswald speaks truth, I said. Honing my observational skills will help me to avoid making enemies in another duchy. Vanessa nodded. Furthermore, milady, for the sake of your future, you will need to make hard choices which cannot be taken back and take responsibility for whatever occurs thereafter. How will you act this time? Her words weighed heavily on me. Was it better to accept my brother's request or reject it? Avara was the authority on these matters, so the fact that he hadn't gone to her indicated that he wanted me to decide this on my own. Avara is of the Lasking faction, after all. Though I recognized that Wilfred was my brother and he needed accomplishments as the next but thought of him stealing work that was entrusted to me felt wrong. At the same time, however, I recall what Mother had said. In preparation for when you marry into another duchy, use this time to strengthen your bonds with Wilfred and Rosamund as much as possible. That doesn't mean get them your achievements! It means to become close with them! My retainers were all waiting on my response, so after another moment of thought, we only finished searching for the documents today, and have not yet compiled our findings. Wilfred can accompany me to the bookroom at third bell, assuming that works with his studying schedule. I would not surrender the task that Rosamund entrusted me with, but I would at least allow Wilfred him to participate. That was my decision. Understood, Lady Charlotte. Well done, Vanessa said with a nod and a praising smile. Marvin departed to send word of my answer. The next day I came out of my room at third bell. There was no one standing in front of Rosamund's chamber, so I wondered whether Feline and Hartman had gone to the bookroom already. I started making my way downstairs and saw Wilfred waiting at the bottom. Charlotte, he said, waving up to me, you know you didn't have to summon Oswald while I was in the bath, right? You could have said something at dinner instead of being all secretive. Father wouldn't have thought you're untalented just because you wanted my help. What? Why is Wilfred acting like I went to him? I was so surprised that I ended up literally speechless. The most I could do was blink at him, dumbfounded. Wilfred popped out his chest and added, but hey, I may have a lot going on, but I never did too busy to help my little sister. You can count on me. It made no sense. What is the meaning of this? Immediately, I gazed up at Oswald. He was looking back at me with a thin smile, his eyes cold and calculating. He acted entirely alone. Worst of all, there was no way for me to protest. Revealing my conversation with my retainers last night would have seemed like too much of an insult. Plus, it would give Oswald ample reason to start telling of the nobles that I possess no situational awareness, thereby damaging my reputation. I will never appreciate the methods used by grandmother's former retainers. I was told you needed more accomplishments to your name, I said, trying to state my position clearly without being blunt enough to cause offense. But despite my best efforts, Wilfred paid me no mind whatsoever. Right, well, let's go. Wilfred, you are dumb! And with that, he started toward the bookroom. His retainers followed, poker-faced, while mine sighed and exchanged bitter expressions before eventually doing the same. It was like there was an unspoken rule to keep the truth hidden from Wilfred, and at that moment it felt as though we had returned to when grandmother was in power. Wilfred may have returned to being the next but I do not want things to revert back to how they were back then. Brother, how do you feel about the training of retainers, I asked, steeling my resolve. I needed him to realize that Oswald was pulling the strings so that he could take action as his lord. I was just thinking about it, actually, he replied. I started to loosen up, but he had eventually realized that his retainers were misbehaving, but then he continued. Rosamund really needs to shape up. It's her duty to make sure her retainers are up to scratch. Are you kidding me? Her retainers are the best! Your retainers are trash, especially Oswald. Oswald's awful! Well, maybe not all his retainers are trash, but yeah, in comparison, I mean. He went on to complain about how uncooperative Rosamund's retainers had been in the Royal Academy, but after seeing Feline and Hartman work yesterday, I was under no impression that they lacked training or were failing to coordinate with their lady. I praised the fact that they were such excellent workers, after only a single season, even without an adult scholar around to train them. Your words are worth much consideration, I ventured. We really must pay very close attention to what our tenants are doing. Exactly. He gave a great big nod in response, but showed absolutely zero self-awareness. It was clear why Mother was concerned about his education, even after he was recognized as an honor student. At this rate, I cannot imagine him being able to support Rosemine as the next OB. He's not going to be able to. I was worried about Ehrenfest's future, but I also felt powerless and profoundly frustrated that OBs were chosen based on gender more than skill. Why had I not been born a man? I would have been a much better partner for Rosemine, and he would have been a much better OB too, probably. Ooh. I cannot help but wish I were a man, I said provocatively. I would not have lost to you then. Uh-oh. Our retainers all sharply inhaled. A schism formed in the blink of an eye, and as tensions rose, Wilfred gave me a competitive grin, seemingly oblivious to the atmosphere forming around us. I wonder about that, he said. I beat Ortwin of Dronko at Gwenin, you know. You wouldn't stand a chance. He's not thinking about Gwenin! She's thinking about being the next OB! Oh my god. Wilfred is so freaking oblivious! This is why I made that video. He's so oblivious! In an instant, the building tension dissipated. If that had been a deliberate move on his part, then I would have had nothing but praise for him. But it seemed more likely that he had just spoken without thinking. Wilfred. So, my duty is going to be to support both him and my sister. The Rose Academy was filled with students from all over Jurgensmith, and I have been told that Rosemine's trends were securing Ehrenfest more connections with top-ranking duchies. I knew that Wilfred was working hard to make up for his lack of education as a child, but as he was now, I didn't have much hope for his socializing. Standing before me was a challenge far greater than any industry document or spring prayer memorization. Will I make it before winter? It seemed that I had much to learn about socializing before it came time for me to join the Royal Academy. Yes, you do. You gotta support this buffoon. And Rosemine's not bad at socializing, it's just she doesn't think about the noble aspect because she usually acts like, she's back in Japan. But she's not. Fleen, I Serve Lady Rosemine, a previously unpublished short story that takes place halfway through Part 4, Volume 4. While helping out at the temple, Fleen looks back on how she came to be Rosemine's apprentice scholar. Author's note, Rosemine and Feline's meeting was cut from the main books because it was just too long and to include, but I turned it into the short story to celebrate reaching 50,000 Naru points? What the heck is that? You might notice that Feline's relationship with Jonsara wasn't always so bad. She did mention that it changed when Jonsara became pregnant. We were on our way to the winter baptism ceremony and debut, where I would first meet Lady Rosemine. My heart fluttered as I climbed into my carriage, and we pushed through the snow. As I lay noble, it was my first time going to the castle. I was nervous about this debut in particular, but my special red dress eased my heart. My late mother had worn it when she was young, though it had been altered slightly since then. After we reached the castle, Father informed the scholar near the entrance of our arrival. We were given directions to a waiting room as I made my way there with my great-aunt, while my father and the others went to the grand hall. My great-aunt was the younger sister of my grandmother on my father's side. Lay nobles often struggled to prepare noble attendants fit for visiting the castle, so it was common to have a family member fill that role instead. Upon our arrival at the waiting room, I saw several other kids with adults. Feline, my great-aunt said, all the children here are going to be your future classmates. Take care not to offend them or behave poorly. I nodded obediently. In terms of status, I ranked low even among the lay nobles, so I was under strict orders to watch my every move in action. A word in action. Of all the children, Lady Rosemine stood out the most. She was sitting elegantly and gazing out the window, her glossy midnight blue hair rolling down over her shoulders. I could see that she was wearing a fancy hairpin of a style I'd never seen before, as well as a new outfit fashioned from the most beautiful cloth. She had probably had it made specially for today. I could not help but compare her vibrant reds to the duller shades of my own clothes. The girl is an archnoble, right? I asked. No, that's Lady Rosemine, my great-aunt replied. She was adopted by Ob Ehrenfest, so take care not to stare uncouthly. Seeing another girl my age was such a rare occurrence for me that I couldn't help but look at her. My mother's friends had at times brought their own children to play with me, many of whom were about as old as me, but they had stopped after she passed away. My father had then married the much younger Lady Jonsara, whose friends were similarly too young to have any children my age. These days, the only child with whom I regularly interacted with was my brother Conrad, but he was so young that he barely spoke any words at all. Okay, so this was when Feline had their debuts. So that was back when they were 7? 8, almost? Or when they just turned 7, at least, I mean. Technically, Rosemine was 8, but whatever. So that has been the start of the academy. First year was when they're 10, the second year 11, third year 12. That was 5 years ago. Oh my god. My great aunt told me that Lady Noble children should play with other Lady Noble children, but how am I supposed to recognize them? Lady Rosamund turned away from the window and leisurely scanned the room. She had remarkably pretty features and golden eyes that sparkled with amusement. The next thing I knew, we were looking straight at one another, and a moment later, she was smiling and waving at me. I was completely taken aback. How on earth was I supposed to respond without seeming rude? Wave back? Of course, when I eventually came to discover what Lady Rosamund was like, the answer became clear to me. I should have just returned the gesture. The baptism ceremony went about as I'd expected. I repeated everything that my family had taught me, and it ended without incident. Next came the debut. We would each play the harpspiel, offering our music to the gods. Feline, the high priest, called. I took the seat waiting for me at the center of the stage, after which Lady Jumpstart brought me my harpspiel. It was a small children's model which my mother had used, and on it I played the song that Lady Jumpstart had taught me. Well done, Feline, Lady Jumpstart said. You played perfectly. You were no shame of a noble, that is for certain, my great aunt added. Indeed, father agreed, you did well. Why couldn't Lady Jumpstart have been nice the whole time? Jesus Christ! Or who knows, like I said, maybe she was hiding how she is. I don't know. All three of them praised me upon my return. Now I only needed to listen to the kids due to perform after me. I could tell as time went on that the stage songs were getting more and more complicated. I struggled enough just trying to learn my song. I wonder how much the Archnoble children had to practice. A lot. At the time, I was unaware of what a tremendous impact a person's tutor and the quality of their instrument had on their playing. I was simply impressed by how hard I imagined the other kids had worked. The last child to perform was Lady Rosamund. Her name was called, and even the elegance with which she took the stage and sat down made her seem like she was from a completely different world than me. She is! Oh, boy. Before the performance actually started, Ob Ehrenfest took a moment to tell us circumstances surrounding Lady Rosamund's adoption. He introduced her as a saint of Ehrenfest, a girl who had enough money to justify her place in the archducal family, so much compassion that she had worked to save mere orphans, and the skills to create new industries from the ground up. Lady Rosamund sat patiently throughout the speech, listening with a smile. She certainly was pretty, but she didn't seem all that extraordinary. I could tell the adults in the audience were just as dubious. Once the Archduke was finished, a beautiful young musician brought an ornate-looking harpspiel onto the stage. Lady Rosamund accepted it, then plucked one of the strings, causing a high-pitched drum to resonate throughout the hall. The melody she played was far more complex than any of the others that had come before, and she paired the beautiful rhythm with the most enchanting singing. Now consider me impressed. This song is complex enough that it can be taught in the Royal Academy. It seems that she is as impressive as the Ob said. Many of the audience quietly voiced their amazement. Lady Rosamund's playing was simply a cut above the rest. What? I murmured, rubbing my eyes in disbelief. It seemed to me that the blue light of a blessing was flowing out of Lady Rosamund's ring. I thought it was an illusion at first, but another voice nearby confirmed my suspicions. Is that a blessing? It continued to pour from Lady Rosamund's ring with each new note she played, slowly filling the grand hall. Seeing such a large-scale blessing for the first time, it put me in a daze. But I wasn't alone. Father, Lady Jumpstart, my great aunt, and everyone else were just as awestruck. We all stared at the light over our heads, not even realizing that the performance was over. Behold, the saint of Ehrenfest, may she be blessed for the wealth and glory she brings to our home, came a sudden call. I turned my attention to the stage and saw the high priest now carrying Lady Rosamund in his arms. Everyone around me raised their staffs in the air and made it shine. I see, so she is a saint. In name alone. That was an extraordinary blessing. She must have the love of the gods. Probably. As everyone stared at Lady Rosamund in shock, she gave a gentle smile, waved, and then calmly left the stage. So saints do exist, Lady Jumpstart said. She has a lot of mana, that much is clear, Father replied. I've never seen such a blessing before. Still, no matter how compassionate she's said to be, I can guarantee she won't treat lay nobles any better than the rest. She's going to be your classmate, Feline, so you'll need to be especially careful around her. The next day, I entered the playroom with a great caution, keeping my father's warning in mind. We children were going to be grouped in accordance with our ranks. My great aunt had told me to not to defy the archnobles or men nobles no matter how they treated me. In her words, the playroom was a very tough place for lay nobles until they could obtain the protection of an archnoble. As it turned out, however, the playroom was nothing like what everyone had told me. The other children were all especially excited about the cards and playing cards that Lady Rosamund had brought with her, and sweets were distributed to all regardless of status. Our professor read from a picture book about the gods, and we studied the alphabet and simple math. Then the personal musicians of Lady Rosamund and Lord Wolfrid taught us more about playing the harpspiel. It was then that I first discovered how great an impact the quality of your tutor and instrument had on your playing. While the rest of us studied, Lady Rosamund sat on her own, reading thick, complicated-looking books she had borrowed from the castle or writing down stories to make into books of her own. She was far beyond the rest of us in her studies, carried out her duties as the High Bishop, won every game whenever she decided to participate, and could produce blessings simply by playing the harpspiel. Calling her the Saint of Ehrenfest no longer seemed the slightest bit strange to me. One day in the playroom, Lady Rosamund came to me with a request. Fleen, do tell me your mother's stories. My mother's passing meant there was nobody else who could share them, so it really warmed my heart that Lady Rosamund was willing to listen and write them down. Fleen, you should transcribe those at least to learn your letters. Lady Rosamund said to me when I was done, I am sure you will pick them up quickly. She then gave me my mother's stories she had written out and a bunch of paper to practice with. Her handwriting was so good that it was hard to believe we were the same age. I had only recently learned to write the alphabet, so I was sure her examples would help me massively. I expected to be able to write your mother's stories by next winter, Lady Rosamund said to me. She allowed me to borrow a picture book Bible as well, and as a show of gratitude, I decided to transcribe the other stories my mother had told me too. I was sure that Lady Rosamund would enjoy reading them. Writing out my mother's stories made me feel as though I were by her side again, and only during these moments was I truly happy. By that point, my mind was already made up. I wanted to serve Lady Rosamund as her retainer. It wasn't long before I ran out of paper, so I asked my father to prepare some wooden boards for me. I continued to write, eager to show off the fruits of my labor during next year's winter playroom. But when it came time for me to return, clutching my shakily written stories, Lady Rosamund was nowhere to be seen. That was when she had the attack. Yeah. We were told that she had been attacked, poisoned, and put into a long slumber. Nobody knew when she would wake up. I wanted the playroom to stay the same as when Lady Rosamund was there, so I did my best to help Lord Wilfrid and Lady Charlotte in her absence. There was always so much I could do, but Daniel was always there to guide us when we were struggling. He had served Lady Rosamund over her time in the temple, and while he normally stood quietly to one side, he was always quick to answer any questions put to him. Daniel, do you have a moment? Of course, Lady Charlotte. Daniel, who had become Lady Rosamund's guard knight despite being a lay noble, had somehow managed to secure the trust of all those Archduke candidates. I found myself both admiring and envying him. So even lay nobles can enter Lady Rosamund's service. Eventually, I decided to share my wish with him. I said to him that I wanted to serve Lady Rosamund too. To what end, he asked, taking my claim seriously instead of dismissing it outright. What can you do for Lady Rosamund? I paused to consider the question, and my eyes automatically wandered to the transcriptions I'd brought with me. I can gather new stories, I said. Lady Rosamund was overjoyed to hear them before, and my hope is to gather even more for her. She certainly would appreciate that. Well, Lady Rosamund doesn't pick based on status, so if she recognizes your hard work, she'll consider you for sure. Do your best, and good luck. Holding these words of encouragement close to my heart, I continued writing stories while waiting for Lady Rosamund to wake up. Fleen, why are you always writing stories? Lady Charlotte asked me one day, her eyes drawn to the boards piled in front of me. I intend to offer them to Lady Rosamund, I replied. I want her to rejoice when she awakens. Oh my, do you mean to say that you aim to become her retainer? Lady Charlotte's indigo eyes widened in surprise, which made me surprised in turn. It was unthinkable for a lay noble to become an archducal retainer. Daniel was serving Lady Rosamund simply because he had been with her for so long, and most knights were loath to visit the temple, and even then, there had been plans to replace him with a men knight or an arch-knight after the first year of her adoption. The only reason he hadn't yet been let go was because Lady Rosamund was still unconscious. I have heard that because he's a lay noble, Daniel's going to be replaced when Lady Rosamund returns to us, I said. I am a lay noble as well, so I do not think I could ever become her retainer. That is irrelevant, though. I simply wish to serve her. And why do you wish to serve my sister? You met her for the very first time during last year's playroom, did you not? I stroked my transcriptions. The stories that Lady Rosamund had written for me endured in the form of paper and wood. No matter how many times I read them, Mother's kind storytelling voice arose in my mind. However, the stories that hadn't been recorded continued to fade from my memory. There were several that I no longer remembered at all. By listening to and recording my mother's stories, Lady Rosamund kept her alive in my heart, I said. She did what no other could, and that is why she is my one and only lady. All these experiences had gotten me where I was now, working as Lady Rosamund's apprentice scholar. I still didn't quite know why she had chosen me, but I was determined to serve her to the best of my ability, until the day came when she told me I was no longer needed. Fleen, scrape this and start again, Lord Ferdinand said to me, heartlessly returning to the board I had been given to him. I was being asked to do math work in the temple, but it felt more like I was being tutored. Lord Ferdinand would expressionlessly reject my calculations more often than he accepted them, so it was hard to say that I was being of any use to Lady Rosamund. Lord Ferdinand wore a peaceful smile whenever he was at the castle, but here at the temple he was generally expressionless, except for when his brow in a frown. He had nothing if not a pretty face, but those moments made my heart stop. It always felt like he was glaring at me. It's okay, Lady Rosamund would say. You'll get used to his expressionlessness eventually. In fact, I think you'll come to realize that his smiles or what you should really fear. I still didn't understand what she meant, which only went to show that I wasn't yet suited to being her retainer. Rejected again, I said, returning to my seat with my board of calculations. Hartman raised an eyebrow at me. Try calming down a bit, Feline. A lot of your errors are simply because you're looking at the wrong digit. He was doing real work, not more worksheets. Daniel nodded in agreement. He was also working alongside us. Your fingers are moving faster than before. You just need to be more careful about making mistakes. Plus, I can assure you Lord Ferdinand isn't angry at you, no matter how much you might think otherwise. I nodded in turn and said, I will do my best. Lord Ferdinand definitely seemed annoyed, but I knew it was wise to trust Daniel about these matters. I mean, he knows Ferdinand better than you do. As I was redoing the math, Lady Rosemine stood up and presented some documents to Lord Ferdinand. He looked them over and said, very good. Oh, she got it very good! Before handing her some more work to go through. It was ever so subtle, but I was sure that I saw his eyes soften a little as he praised her. Maybe it was just my imagination, though. I don't think it was your imagination. I think he did. Yeah, he's fond of her. He thinks fondly of her, essentially. Because he's been around her so long. This originally came under the High Bishop's duties. Learn to do it. It seems a bit troublesome. Lord Ferdinand was merciless when he delegated work, but Lady Rosemont would always complete it without fail. I intended to do my best and be of as much use as possible, but I still had a long way to go before I could be deemed worthy of serving as Lady Rosemine's retainer. You're working hard, Hartman said to me. Lady Rosemont rejoiced when she read the stories you gathered at the Royal Academy. You've gathered many stories of your own. And while I was searching for stories that would make Lady Rosemont happy, Hartman was simply recording where the legend of her sainthood had started and how it had developed from there. He would always gleefully visit the temple, saying that the Grey Priest in attendance from her chambers and the workshop offered the most riveting insights entirely unlike anything heard in the castle. Hartman, where are you going? I asked. To the orphanage. Lady Rosemine's attendant, Wilma, and former attendant, Delia, are there, and they both tell very intriguing stories. People who find themselves in the same situation can still provide entirely unique tales about Lady Rosemine depending on their position and relationship with her. Lord Ferdinand and Lady Rosemine gave Hartman even more duties than they did me, but he would always finish them swiftly and then start helping the Grey Priest with their work. He normally used that opportunity to speak with them about one thing or another. The temple attendants were generally tense around nobles, but Hartman had managed to get past that by interacting with them casually and always starting up rousing conversations about what made Lady Rosemine so amazing. I thought his people skills were very impressive, but he assured me that his techniques had all come from Lord Justice. Nice! Incidentally, I still didn't know very much about Lord Justice, other than that he would apparently cross-dress to obtain information. I can't wait to see that! Oh my god, that's gonna be good! Keep on transcribing that Dunkelfelder book, Hartman said to me. I'll be back before Lady Rosemine looks up from her reading. Hartman had only ever had spirited discussions about Lady Rosemine in the orphanage, the workshop, or the High Bishop's chambers. Basically, whenever Our Lady was focused on her books, I didn't know how he managed it, but he always seemed to wrap things up right before Lady Rosemine stopped reading. And no matter where he went, he always got back in time. How does he do that? On a daily basis, Hartman's supreme competence made my shortcomings all too clear to me. Woo woo! We're getting to the comics. Okay, a comfy life of my family. Rosemine has become a valuable Rosemine has become a valuable herb. What? What's this? Eckert? Justice? Eckert's opinion of her is shooting up. Huh? She's got an herb on her head. And she's like, what the fuck? I can't go to the forest, huh? If any of the others must know my rage. First, I'll watch them day in, day out. I'll record all these habits. Then I'll start appearing at their usual spots, always just out of sight, like a stalker. Behind shelves, under tables, they'll sense my gaze, but have no idea where I am. And while they sleep, I'll whisper in their ears. I'll make them feel the pain of my destroyed tablets. She's laughing in her sleep. Dad, hurry, tell mine she can't go back to the forest. Yes, before she tries to do something she's not going to be able to do. Oh my god. Okay, work harder, brother. If only I were a boy, I would treat Rosemont so much better than Wilfred does. Yeah, you would! If she needed to go anywhere, I would escort her. If she needed a job done, I would complete it and swiftly and to perfection. Ah, so cute. I would show her that she can trust me more than anyone. Charlotte, I'm so glad to have you be by my side. Or so she would say. I hate you, Wilfred, so much. He's like, huh? He's like, what is she going on about? Oh, warning sign. This may be rude of me to say, but Lord Ferdinand has a scary face. He does. Work check. My sincerest apologies. I will redo it all at once. Ferdinand, please don't bully my apprentice scholars. He goes, mind your tongue. Oh yeah, you can see where he's looking at. He goes work check and she hands it to him, and you can see his eyebrows knit slightly in the next panel. And that means she thinks that she did it wrong. Oh, I like the pictures. Indigo. Why am I thinking indigo as purple? Is indigo blue? Because her eyes look more blue than purple. Charlotte's eyes, I mean. Girl, what the heck are you even holding? Oh, it's a face stone, I guess. Okay. I hope you guys are excited for more. Once the new book comes out, I will definitely start it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.